If someone had told me minding my business would make me the only person she could trust, I would have sat farther from the spotlight. Crowded houses, sticky floors, thumping music, people spilling drinks everywhere. No thank you. My life was quiet, manageable. My classes, my apartment, my books, my small group of friends. Chaos was something I observed from a safe distance. We were both 21, in our final year of college. But then there was Kira. Kira is the kind of friend who thrives on disaster. She hears about a party and already knows we're going. "Come on," she said one Thursday afternoon, barging into my room while I was reorganizing my textbooks. "Free drinks, good music, and someone has to make sure your dad doesn't embarrass himself." I groaned. "I'm not going. Parties aren't my thing." "You are going," she said, flinging a dress at me like a challenge. And yes, that is an order. And before I could argue, she was out of the room, leaving me to stare at the ridiculous dress in my hands. Saturday came. I stood in front of my mirror, examining my reflection. The dress wasn't terrible. It was just Kira level extra. I tied my hair back, not too tight, and applied the smallest amount of makeup to avoid looking like a Halloween costume. I grabbed my purse, slipped on flats instead of heels, comfort first, and braced myself. When we arrived, the house was already vibrating with noise. Bass shook the windows. People spilled onto the front lawn, laughing, shouting, passing drinks between hands. The smell of sweat, perfume, and spilled alcohol hit me immediately, and I wished briefly that I stayed home. Kira practically pulled me through the front door. "See, not so bad. Just survive until I find you a cute guy to flirt with." I rolled my eyes, trying to look unbothered, and followed her into the chaos. The living room was crowded. Bodies swayed in time with the music. Drinks sloshed and tipped across tables. Someone laughed so hard they nearly slid off the couch. I hovered near the edge, uneasy, clutching a flimsy plastic cup filled with barely passable beer. This was where my life sat in that moment, watching the frenzy, counting my breaths, measuring precisely how fast I could escape. I wasn't really tuned in. Not exactly, no. I was simply enduring. And that's when it began. Subtle, almost unseen. A loose sleeve brushed my arm as someone jostled past me. A tipped drink barely, mercifully, missed. Nothing major, nothing notable. Just the low hum of disorder that would later erupt into something unforgettable. Kira, naturally, had already melted into the crowd. I was left scanning the room for a known face, or at least a quiet corner. My eyes caught motion by the kitchen. Someone laughing at something dumb, gliding through the crush like they belonged there more than I did. I barely registered it. Not yet. This was still only the setup, the hush before the storm. We were about to plunge fully into the mess, and I had no clue that before the night was over, everything I believed about boundaries, accidents, and desires was about to be completely rewritten. Kira latched onto my arm again. "Come on, let's grab a drink and join the group over there. I swear you'll thank me." I sighed. My quiet Saturday was officially over. And that's how we headed deeper into the party, toward all the disorder, dares, and sparks I never saw coming. After weaving through the heaving crowd, Kira finally tugged me to a calmer apartment down the block. A friend of a friend kind of scene. Low lights, a living room that smelled faintly of incense and old wine. Couches pushed against walls to carve space for a circle of people. This was a world away from the turmoil outside. "Truth or dare?" Kira murmured, grinning. "Relax. This is way more fun." I perched on the edge of a couch, gripping a drink, trying to blend into the background. The first round started casually. Harmless questions, silly dares. Someone had to eat a spoonful of mustard. Another had to text their ex something ridiculous. Laughter bounced around the room. I started to feel almost comfortable. Almost. And then I saw her. She wasn't part of my world yet. I didn't know her name. I didn't know who she was. She leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, sipping a dark drink, watching the game with an amused expression. My first thought, she was gorgeous, hot, confident, with a kind of ease in her posture that made everyone else in the room seem clumsy by comparison. Her hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders, dark, but catching the dim light and hints of red. Her eyes, sharp, playful, and just a little teasing, scanned the room like she was amused by all the chaos outside. She looked somewhat older than me, maybe a few years, enough to be noticeable, but not intimidating. That only made her presence feel electric. I caught her gaze for a moment. She smiled subtly, not flirty, not forced, just aware, and I realized I couldn't stop looking. My heart skipped. Something about the way she moved, the tilt of her head as she leaned back against the wall made it impossible to look away. She laughed at someone's ridiculous stare. A person had to admit their most embarrassing crush, and I felt a jolt in my chest. I wanted to laugh, too, to lean forward, to be closer. But I froze, trying to convince myself, it's just a party, nothing else. Calm down. Still, even from across the room, even in the corner of my eye, she made every other person in that apartment fade. Something about her presence demanded attention. Confident, playful, impossibly alluring. And just like that, I knew the night was about to get complicated. The game continued, and I tried to focus on it, answering questions and laughing at dares. But my attention kept drifting to her. She wasn't actively participating yet, just observing, sipping her drink, smirking at the ridiculousness around her. Eventually, someone dared her to pick a player and whisper something embarrassing in their ear. She scanned the circle, eyes flicking over people, and then slowly, deliberately, her gaze landed on me. My stomach did a ridiculous little flip. She got up and walked toward me, confident, but not intimidating. Every step measured casual. When she reached me, she leaned slightly closer than necessary. Her perfume hit me, subtle, warm, intoxicating, and I swallowed hard. "Hey," she said, her voice low, teasing, almost a purr. "I hope you're ready for some truth or dare chaos." I nodded, words sticking in my throat. My mind was suddenly empty, which of course made me sound like an idiot when I finally managed to squeak, Sure. She smiled, that small knowing curl of her lips, and whispered, "Just for me? Don't worry, I'll go easy on you." The circle laughed as the next dare came up. Someone had to balance a cup on their head while spinning around 3 times. She leaned toward me again, lightly brushing my arm with hers. It was accidental. She probably didn't even realize, but I felt it down to my stomach. "You were easy to tease," she murmured, and my face heated. I laughed nervously, trying to play it cool, but she was like a magnet. Every small movement drew me closer. Every glance, every smile tugging at something I didn't want to ignore. By the next round, the group had moved closer. Everyone giggling, the room tighter, more intimate. Somehow we kept finding ourselves next to each other, crouching to grab something from the floor, leaning in to hear each other over the laughter, hands brushing, bodies shifting in ways that felt accidental but charged. When she laughed at my weak attempt to mimic a dare, she leaned just a little too close, her shoulder brushing mine. I could feel her warmth, subtle but undeniable. My pulse jumped. She caught my glance and held it. For a second, everything else faded. The room, the other people, even Kira somewhere across the circle. It was just her and me. And in that moment, a thought hit me, unbidden, but impossible to ignore. She's hot, gorgeous, confident, somehow older than me, but not intimidatingly so. Just enough to feel electric. That thought made my chest tighten, and I realized with a jolt that the night had just taken a turn. Something was about to happen, something I couldn't see coming. The circle was buzzing with laughter, dares growing slightly bolder, the room tighter, warmer. Everyone pressed together in a haze of music and chatter. Kira, of course, noticed immediately what I was too distracted to fully realize. The magnetic tension between me and the woman leaning casually against the wall. She grinned wickedly, her mischievous eyes glinting. "You do," she said loudly, pointing to Sloane, the mysterious, confident woman whose presence made the air feel heavier. "I dare you to take her somewhere private." 7 minutes. Go. The room erupted in cheers and laughter. Sloane's lips curved into a slow, deliberate smile. She glanced at me for the first time in a way that felt charged, almost predatory. Her eyes darkened with amusement, like she understood every word without anyone speaking it. 7 minutes, huh? She murmured low enough for only me to hear her. Her voice was smooth, teasing, magnetic. My stomach nodded instantly. I nodded and not sure if I was supposed to protest, but she simply stepped closer. The heat radiating off her made it impossible to think clearly. She said softly, brushing past me in a way that lingered just long enough for my pulse to spike. We slipped away from the circle, weaving through the small crowd until we found a narrow corridor that led to a pantry-like storage room. Boxes of snacks and soda cans lined the walls, and the dim light from a single bulb made shadows dance across her face. The door clicked softly behind us, and suddenly it was just the two of us. The hum of the party outside felt miles away. Sloane leaned against the shelves, eyes flicking over me slowly. I tried to steady my breathing, my hands gripping the edge of a counter to keep from looking like I was about to melt entirely under her gaze. "You know," she said, tilting her head. "This is exciting." Her lips curved into a slow smile, but made me swallow hard. I laughed nervously, heart racing. "Yeah, that's probably a good thing." She shrugged, stepping a little closer. Close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating off her body. Her hair brushed my shoulder. "Names are overrated," she murmured. "I like discovering things in the moment." My pulse thudded so loudly I was sure she could hear it. The air between us was thick, charged, and dangerous in the most thrilling way. We didn't speak for a few seconds, just studied each other in that quiet, cramped pantry. A shared awareness hanging in the air. Every accidental brush of her hand, every slight shift of her weight sent sparks racing through me. 7 minutes. That's what Kira dared. And somehow I already knew those 7 minutes were going to feel like forever. The pantry felt impossibly small. Walls lined with boxes, the single dim bulb casting long shadows across Sloane's face. The air was heavy, warm, and charged with an energy I couldn't ignore. Every accidental brush of her hand, every step she took closer made my chest tighten, my pulse spike. Then, before I could react, she pressed me against the wall. Her hands framed me, fingers digging lightly into my arms, holding me there with a confidence that left me breathless. "Well," she murmured, voice low and teasing, "since we're already here, we might as well mess around." My heart jumped, my breath hitched. I wanted this, wanted her more than I could have admitted a minute ago. My body responded before my brain could protest. My pulse spiked and I forgot what to say, pulse racing. She angled me gently, tipping my face toward her as her hands skimmed along my neck, thumb tracing the place where skin met collarbone. I shivered, wanting her nearer, craving her touch. Then she kissed my neck and I completely lost my composure. My head dropped slightly, letting her take command. I was already burning with anticipation, my body betraying me with each lingering touch and kiss. Her other hand slipped around the back of my neck, tipping my head a fraction, granting her perfect access. She moved slowly, taunting, her lips. We were too close, and I forgot how to breathe. My knees threatened to give. My hands pressed to her shoulders, unable to resist. And then she paused, letting the tension hang for a heartbeat. Her eyes met mine, dark and mischievous, and she leaned in just a little more, tilting her head before her mouth finally met mine. We kissed and everything outside the door blurred out, and the heat between us flared. Every pressure against mine sent tremors down my spine. I was hers in that moment, completely consumed by sensation. The world beyond the pantry faded to nothing. Her hands traveled down my arms, gripping gently yet firmly. She pulled me closer and I lost my composure. Though reality had long since slipped away, I gasped softly into her mouth, overwhelmed by the combination of her closeness, the heat of her body, and the intoxicating scent that clung to her. Every kiss, every touch was building me up, leaving me achingly aware of every nerve in my body. The tension was overwhelming. Every brush of her hands, every kiss, every whisper of breath sent shivers down my spine, and I was barely aware of anything outside that small, dim pantry. Sloane shifted her weight slightly, and we steadied ourselves against the shelf and tried not to laugh, stacked with boxes along the wall. My hands gripping her shoulders as she held me close, the warmth of her body pressed into mine, and I couldn't think straight. She leaned in again, and I forgot what to say, while her hands explored my back and sides. My head fell back, hair brushing the shelves behind me, and I let out a soft gasp, completely lost in the sensation. My heart was hammering, my body already reacting high and hot from every touch and kiss. It felt reckless and impossible to ignore. And then a sharp single knock at the pantry door. We froze. A voice from the other side called casual but insistent, "Hey, 7 minutes are up." Sloane's eyes flashed with a mixture of amusement and frustration. She groaned softly, pressing one last quick kiss to my cheek, before stepping back slightly, helping me down from the table. My legs were shaky, my body buzzing, and I could feel the lingering heat between us. We exchanged a brief, almost guilty glance, a silent acknowledgement of what had just happened and the chaos we were leaving behind, before she straightened, brushing her hair back and giving me that same confident, teasing smile that had started this whole thing. The pantry door opened and we stepped out, hearts still racing, flush and breathless, back into the noise and laughter of the game. But now everything had changed. The tension between us wasn't just a spark anymore. It was a wildfire, and neither of us knew how or when it would burn next. We stepped out of the pantry, hearts still hammering, clothes slightly disheveled, hair a little messy, and the dim light of the main room hitting us like a spotlight. The laughter and chaos of the truth or dare game came rushing back, but I felt like I was somewhere else entirely. Kira was immediately on me. She had that wide, knowing grin, the one that made me want to disappear into the floor. She grabbed my arm, practically shaking me, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Oh my," she whispered loudly, leaning close. "Damn, you look flustered. And wait a second." She tilted her head, her gaze dropping to my lips. "You've got lipstick smudged all over you. You kissed her, didn't you?" My face burned. I could feel the heat climbing my neck, and I had to bite back a laugh that was half embarrassment, half pure exhilaration. I nodded, voice low, shaky. "Yeah." I admitted it was a fantastic. I almost got cracked. If we weren't interrupted, I'm sure it would have happened. Kira's eyes widened in delight, and she grabbed my shoulders for emphasis, laughing quietly. "Oh, this is perfect. You actually kissed her." "I knew it." I laughed nervously, brushing a hand over my lips. Where her kiss had left a faint smudge, I was still rattled and breathless. Every thought fogged with the memory of her hands, her mouth. The heat pressed against me. "God," I muttered, shaking my head, trying to steady myself. "I can't believe that happened." And it felt so wrong and right at the same time. Kira just smirked, clearly pleased with herself for setting this whole thing in motion. She said, "You'll have to tell me everything later, okay? But for now, try to act normal, okay?" I drew a deep breath, trying to slow the racing of my pulse, and nodded. But I knew one thing. Normal was gone. Completely gone. Everything about this night, about her, had shifted. And even as the game kept rolling around us, my mind drifted straight back to Sloane. The way she had pinned me, kissed me, and made my entire body melt against hers. I was still trying to catch my breath, wiping at the smeared lipstick on my mouth when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and froze. It was a text from my dad. "Why aren't you home yet? You're way past the curfew I set. Get home now or don't expect to go out again anytime soon." My stomach sank. Of course, just as I was starting to come down from the chaos of the pantry, reality crashed back in like a wrecking ball. Kira noticed instantly. She nudged me with her elbow, eyes gleaming with curiosity and mischief. "What's wrong? Did your dog just text?" I held up my phone, showing her the message. "Yeah, he's reminding me that I'm late. He actually gave me a curfew." Kira laughed, practically snorting. "A curfew? Girl, you're literally in your last year of college. What is he thinking?" "I have no idea," I muttered, raking a hand through my hair, still feeling the leftover heat from the pantry and counter. Her grin widened wickedly. "Well, let's wrap this up then before your dad makes your next night out impossible. Honestly, if you're still out past this, he'll probably revoke all your weekends. Seriously, who even sets curfews for someone in their final year?" I groaned, partly embarrassed, partly annoyed. I know, I should have left earlier. But this game, my voice trailed off. The memory of Sloane's warmth, her lips, and her teasing gaze still made it impossible to sound entirely normal. Kira leaned closer, smirking like she knew exactly what had happened in the pantry. "Don't worry, girl. I'll drop you off. No one's going to die if you're a few minutes late tonight. But seriously, next time maybe try to keep things under the radar." I let out a shaky laugh, shaking my head. "Yeah, okay. Thanks." My pulse was still racing, my body buzzing with the memory of her touch. Even though I knew I had to go, part of me didn't want to leave yet. Not when her image was still burned into my mind. Every curve, every glance, every teasing smile. Kira clapped her hands lightly and said, "All right, enough drama. Let's grab your coat and we'll get you home before your dad starts texting in all caps." I slung my bag over my shoulder, still catching glimpses of Sloane in the crowd. Her smirk, the way she leaned back against the wall. My heart sank a little, or maybe it skipped a beat, knowing I had no idea when I'd see her again. Kira drove me home, the car quiet except for the faint hum of the engine and the occasional laugh from her, recounting some ridiculous dare from the party. I stared out the window, watching the street lights blur past. But my mind wasn't on her stories at all. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sloane. The way she had leaned in close in the pantry, the wet teasing kiss on my neck, the way she had pinned me effortlessly to the wall. Every detail burned into my memory. My cheeks flushed all over again, and I realized I was still trembling slightly. Kira nudged me with an elbow. "Hey, you okay back there? You look like you're in another world." I snapped back, forcing a laugh. Yeah, I'm fine." But the truth, I wasn't fine at all. I was buzzing hot and frustrated because as much as I'd wanted that moment, and I did more than I'd ever admit aloud, I hadn't even gotten her number. We pulled up in front of my dad's apartment. I grabbed my bag, muttering a quick thanks. Kira gave me a mischievous grin. "All right, next weekend. Don't be late and maybe get a little more than just a kiss, huh?" I rolled my eyes nervously and stepped out. The door clicked behind me, and I finally allowed myself to exhale. In my room, I collapsed onto the bed, tossing my bag to the floor. The lights were dim, the familiar hum of the city outside my window, but sleep felt impossibly distant. My body still had from the adrenaline, my skin tingling where her hands and lips had been. I buried my face in the pillow, trying to calm down, but my thoughts kept drifting back. The way she'd pulled me close, and then the thought that made my stomach twist. I hadn't even gotten her number, not a single clue of how to reach her. I might never see her again. I groaned softly, rolling onto my side. "Stupid," I muttered to the ceiling. I should have at least asked, but she was incredible. I closed my eyes, imagining that confident smirk again. The way her fingers had brushed mine in the pantry. The playful tilt of her head as she whispered in my ear. Sleep finally edged closer, But even as I drifted off, Sloane was still there, etched into my mind. Impossible to forget. A few weeks passed. Life slowly slipped back into routine. Classes, assignments, and campus life dominated my days. Early mornings rushing to lectures, caffeine-fueled afternoons, and evenings spent trying not to procrastinate, or more honestly, letting my thoughts wander to moments I probably shouldn't have been thinking about. Kira and I kept up our daily lunches like clockwork. We'd meet in the small cafe near campus, laughing loudly over fries and sodas, teasing each other about ridiculous classmates or the latest trending gossip. Our shared classes made it easy to sneak in quick jokes or pass notes without getting caught. I enjoyed her company, comforting, easy. But even in the midst of our chaos, the night at that party flickered through my mind from time to time like a half-forgotten dream. Then one evening, my phone rang when I was packing up my bag in the library. I glanced at the screen, expecting some assignment reminder, or maybe a group project notification. "Hello," I answered cautiously, flipping my backpack over my shoulder. "Honey," my dad's voice came through, warm and casual, but carrying a subtle edge of excitement. "Can you be home for dinner tomorrow? I want to introduce you to someone." I paused, chewing on the inside of my cheek. Okay, who?" "You'll see," he replied, chuckling softly. "Just be ready around 7. Trust me, she's someone I think you'll like." I swallowed, trying to hide the sudden nervous flutter in my stomach. "All right, 7 it is." I hung up and sank into a nearby chair, staring at my phone. Who could it be? My dad rarely mentioned people he was dating before first introduction. The thought of some new person, possibly someone I'd have to make small talk over dinner, made me uneasy. I imagined the scene. A quiet, polite dinner. My dad smiling proudly as he introduced me to this stranger. Me trying to act normal while internally panicking. My mind ran through every possible scenario. Was it a friend from work, a colleague, someone from a charity or club he'd joined recently? I shook my head, exhaling slowly. "Okay, just calm down," I muttered to myself. "It's just dinner. Nothing weird. Just be polite." Still, I couldn't help feeling a little flutter of anticipation. Who was this person? How old? What would they be like? My stomach twisted in nervous curiosity as I realized that tomorrow evening, my carefully controlled life would include someone completely unknown. Someone my dad thought I should meet. The rest of the night I found myself distracted, even while finishing homework, packing my bag for the next day, or scrolling through social media. That tiny question lingered in the back of my mind. Who is she? The next evening, I got home earlier than usual, giving myself plenty of time to get ready. The apartment smelled faintly of dinner being prepared, a mix of herbs and something roasting in the oven. I could hear the faint clatter of pans from the kitchen and the low hum of my dad moving around, probably checking that everything was perfect. I locked my bedroom door behind me and went straight to my closet. I didn't want anything too fancy, but I also didn't want to look like I hadn't made any effort. After a few minutes of debating, I settled on a simple dark blouse and fitted jeans. Casual, neat, and flattering enough. I ran a brush through my hair until it fell smoothly round my shoulders, and gave myself a final glance in the mirror, making sure nothing looked out of place. Just as I was adjusting my earrings, I heard the faint chime of the doorbell from downstairs. My stomach did a little flip. "Dad," I called, trying to mask the nervous edge in my voice. "Come down, honey." His voice carried from the kitchen, cheerful and a little excited. "She's here." I swallowed, heart thumping, and hurried down the stairs. Each step felt longer than the last. The scent of dinner grew stronger. Roasted chicken, garlic, fresh bread, making the apartment feel warm and homey. My hands twisted nervously in front of me as I reached the bottom step, catching a glimpse of the front door. My dad stood to the side, grinning, looking impossibly proud. "Go on," he said, nudging me gently. "Meet her. I think you like her." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. My stomach twisted with curiosity, my pulse quickening. Who was she? What would she be like? How would this dinner unfold? I stepped forward, reaching for the door, heart hammering in my chest. The moment of truth had arrived. I took a deep breath and opened the door. The moment my eyes landed on her, my stomach dropped. My brain stalled, my mouth went dry, and I couldn't form a single coherent thought. It had to be her. There was no mistaking it. The same confident posture, the way she carried herself. That faint curl of a mischievous smile tugging at her lips. She was even more stunning than I remembered, dressed casually but effortlessly elegant, with that same aura of confidence that had completely disarmed me weeks ago at the party. I froze, tongue-tied, staring like an idiot. My dad chuckled softly from behind me, sensing my hesitation. "Honey, this is Sloane." Sloane's eyes met mine, a flicker of recognition and amusement passing across her face. She smiled that slow teasing smile that had haunted my thoughts since that night. "Hi," she said, voice smooth and warm, exactly the way I remembered. My knees nearly buckled at the sound. It's nice to finally meet you properly." I managed a weak, flustered laugh, my cheeks burning. "Yeah, I mean, it's nice to meet you, too." The words felt clumsy, inadequate, but they were all I could manage. My mind was racing, recalling every detail from the pantry, every touch, every kiss. And now here she was standing just a few feet away in my dad's living room, completely aware that we were meeting under completely normal circumstances. Sloane tilted her head slightly with that same playful gleam in her eyes. And for a moment, I felt like I was being completely unmasked. My pulse raced, my thoughts scrambled, and I realized with a jolt that nothing in my mind had prepared me for this reunion. We all moved into the dining room, the warm aroma of dinner filling the air. My dad had set the table neatly, polished silverware, folded napkins, and a few candles flickering softly, making the space feel cozy and intimate. I slid into my chair, still trying to calm my racing heart. Across from me, Sloane sat gracefully, her posture perfect, eyes glinting with amusement as she casually scanned the table. My stomach knotted, every memory from the party flashing vividly. I tried to act normal, but my hands kept twitching, and I couldn't stop glancing at her. As my dad began serving the first course, I stealthily pulled out my phone from my pocket. My fingers shook slightly as I typed a message to Kira. "Oh my God, girl. You have no idea what just happened. The woman from the party is the person my dad wanted me to meet tonight." Within seconds, her reply popped up. "You have to be joking." "What? No. Did you tell your dad?" I quickly touched back. "No, I couldn't. I can't even right now." Before I could hide the phone, my dad's voice cut through the room. Calm but firm. "Please, no phone on the table." My heart sank. I froze, sliding the phone into my lap, cheeks burning. Sloane's eyes flicked toward me, a mischievous sparkle in them, and she bit her lower lip, suppressing a smile. It was clear she already knew exactly what I was thinking. I exhaled slowly, trying to focus on the table. My dad continued pouring a bit of water into our glasses, completely oblivious to the mental chaos consuming me. I forced myself to concentrate on the food, on casual small talk, but my mind kept drifting to Sloane, her subtle glances, the way she had smiled at me across the table, and the memories that refused to stay buried. Even while nodding politely and answering questions about college, my fingers itched to check my phone again. Kira's texts probably hadn't stopped, and yet, I had to act normal. Every second felt like a balancing act between pretending to be composed and dying a little inside, from the sheer impossibility of the situation. As the main course was served, roasted chicken with garlic and herbs, mashed potatoes, and steamed vegetables, my dad leaned back slightly, looking at both of us with an easy smile. The conversation flowed smoothly, mostly small talk about school and work, but I could feel the tension under my skin. every glance at Sloane sending my pulse racing. Curiosity finally got the better of me. I cleared my throat, trying to sound casual, though my voice probably carried more curiosity than intended. So, when exactly did you two start seeing each other? I asked, glancing from my dad to Sloane, careful not to betray how flustered I still was. My dad chuckled softly, a bit of nervous pride in his expression. He said, "Well, we just started seeing each other about 2 weeks ago." Sloane's eyes flicked to mine, her lips curling into that same teasing, slow smile. My stomach flipped. 2 weeks ago. That meant the timing of the party, my encounter with her. It was all a little too coincidental, but I couldn't let myself think about that now. 2 weeks, I repeated, trying to sound neutral while my brain was racing. Wow, that's very recent. My dad nodded, glancing at Sloane with a warmth that made my chest tighten in a way I didn't want to admit. He nodded, glancing at Sloane with a warmth that made my chest tighten in a way I didn't want to admit. Yeah, it's been exciting so far. We're taking things slow, but it's been really nice. Sloane gave a small, polite nod, though her eyes lingered on me just a fraction too long, a hint of amusement dancing in them. My heart thumped outly, or maybe that just felt that way. I tried to sip my water, hoping it would calm me, but the warmth from the memory of her in the pantry, combined with the knowledge that she'd only recently started seeing my dad, made it impossible to stay composed. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to focus on the conversation. "That's really nice," I said, keeping my tone light. Though my mind was spinning, every word felt heavy, every glance from her like a spark lighting me up from the inside. I took another careful sip of water, forcing myself to focus on the conversation. But it was impossible to ignore the way Sloane's eyes kept finding mine across the table. Every small movement, the tilt of her head, the way she lightly brushed her hair behind her ear made my pulse spike. My dad continued talking about his work and some new project he was excited about, but I barely registered the words. I was acutely aware of Sloane's presence. The curve of her smile when she lightly laughed at something my dad said. The way her gaze lingered just a fraction too long. I tried to look casual, resting my hands on my lap, but I could feel myself fidgeting under the table, legs bouncing slightly, fingers tapping in subtle impatience. I couldn't help it. The memory of that night, the pantry, the heat between us was still so vivid in my mind. And here she was, so close, seemingly calm and unaffected. At one point, she reached for the bread basket and our hands brushed ever so slightly. I froze, heart hammering, my mind screaming, and she simply smiled softly. Our hands almost met as we reached for the bread. We both laughed it off. My breath hitched, and I quickly glanced down at my plate, hoping no one noticed. My dad, blissfully unaware, continued chatting, occasionally glancing at us with that proud, relaxed expression he always had when he was happy. But the tension between Sloane and me hung in the air, subtle but undeniable. Every laugh, every word, every glance felt charged. I caught myself stealing quick looks at her, memorizing the way the candlelight reflected in her eyes, the curve of her lips, the subtle smirk that seemed designed to tease me without even trying. I tried to take a bite of my food, but it barely registered. My thoughts kept spiraling, imagining what it would have been like if that pantry moment hadn't been interrupted, feeling a flush rise to my cheeks, heat pooling low in my stomach. Sloane leaned back slightly in her chair, letting her gaze linger on me with that same teasing, confident intensity. I bit my lip, trying to focus on the conversation, but it was hopeless. Every instinct I had was screaming, "Pay attention to her. Don't let her slip away," even though nothing inappropriate had happened yet. Dinner was winding down, the last bites of chicken gone, plates pushed slightly aside, and my dad chatting about some minor work update. I tried to focus on the conversation, nodding and offering polite responses, but it was almost impossible to ignore the way she had subtly shifted in her seat. We kept catching each other's eyes across the table, every now And then, she would. Just enough that I felt it. My stomach fluttered, heat pooling low, and I had to clench my hands in my lap to stop myself from reacting too obviously. I could feel my pulse racing, my face warming. Each touch was electric, sending shivers up my spine. I tried to act casual, taking a sip of water or nodding at my dad. But inside I was burning. The casual brush of her knee, the subtle way her leg would press against mine when reaching for something, made it feel like the air between us was charged. My dad laughed at some comment she made, oblivious, and I realized that he was trying not to look obvious. I could feel my face getting hot and I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from gasping or giving away how affected I was. Sloane, meanwhile, looked perfectly calm, almost playful, her eyes flicking toward me with that teasing, knowing glint that made my chest tighten. I knew she was aware of the effect she was having, and the thought made me even hotter, my body responding despite my attempts to stay composed. Finally, my dad cleared his throat, glancing at the clock. "Well, that was lovely. Thank you for coming by, Sloane. It was wonderful to have you by. We should do this again soon." Sloane smiled politely, but her eyes lingered on me just a moment longer than necessary. I felt my heart skip a beat, heat still rising from her subtle touches under the table. "Absolutely," she said, her voice smooth and calm. "I'd love that." The tension was almost unbearable as my dad got up to clear the plates, leaving Sloane and me alone for a brief moment at the table. I could still feel the memory of every touch, every brush of her leg under the table, and I realized I was hotter and more flustered than I had been in weeks. As my dad moved toward the kitchen to help, Sloane's eyes flicked to mine again, a small smirk tugging at her lips. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my breathing, knowing that tonight was far from over in my mind. Even if nothing else happened during dinner, the fire had been reignited. My dad leaned back in his chair, patting his stomach like he always did after a good meal. "Well," he said with a satisfied sigh, "that hit the spot. Let me grab my keys and give you a ride home, Sloane." Before I could even process it, Sloane tilted her head toward him with a small, polite smile. "Actually, if it's okay, maybe she could take me home instead," she said, her eyes sliding over to me in a way that made my chest tighten. It'd be nice to get to know her more. We didn't really get much time, just the two of us. My fork nearly slipped out of my hand. I froze, trying not to look too obvious, but my pulse thicked up immediately. My dad glanced between us, eyebrows raised, then nodded without a second thought. "You know what? That's a great idea," he said warmly, completely oblivious to the heat spreading across my cheeks. "You girls should spend a little time together. It'll be good for you both." Sloane's lips curved into the faintest smile, subtle, but loaded. "If you don't mind," she added gently, keeping her tone casual. "Not at all," my dad replied, standing and gathering the last of the dishes. "She knows the roads well, and it'll give me time to finish up that report tonight anyway." I tried to keep my face neutral, but inside my thoughts were spiraling. She wanted me to take her home after what she just pulled under the table. My palms felt clammy, and I wiped them quickly on my jeans as I stood up. "Sure," I managed, forcing my voice to sound even. "I'll drive you." Sloane met my gaze with those dark, playful eyes and nodded. "Perfect." She picked up her bag slowly, almost deliberately, like she wasn't in a rush at all. Her hand brushed against mine as she slung the strap over her shoulder. And though it could have easily been accidental, the warmth that shot through me told me it wasn't. My dad carried the plates into the kitchen, calling over his shoulder, "Drive, you two, and don't take too long. It's getting late." "Don't worry, I'll take good care of her," Sloane said smoothly before I could respond. I swallowed hard, caught between nervousness and a rush of heat. Her words were casual on the surface, but I felt the double meaning settle deep in my chest. I grabbed my car keys from the counter, trying not to let my hands shake. She followed me to the door, and I could feel her presence behind me, every step raising the tension higher. As we stepped out into the cool night air, I realized my entire body was buzzing. The touches under the table, the way she'd volunteered me, and now the fact that it would just be us alone in the car. The second the car door shut, the whole world felt too quiet. I gripped the steering wheel tighter than I needed to, my fingers pressing into the leather, my knuckles pale under the faint glow from the dashboard. My chest was tight, and the only thing I could hear was the steady tick of the turn signal. As I backed out of the driveway, Sloane sat beside me, her perfume already filling the car. Something light and floral, but sharp enough to keep distracting me. I kept my eyes glued to the road, determined not to look at her because the second I did, I knew my composure would crack. She was the one who broke the silence first. "I know what you're thinking. And no, I wasn't seeing your dad the last time we met. We met after." I barked out a sharp little laugh, more bitter than amused, my jaw tightening as I shifted gears. "That doesn't make it better," I muttered, my voice lower and harsher than I intended. "I literally made out with the woman who was now seeing my dad. Do you even hear how messed up that sounds?" I risked a quick glance at her, and of course she was leaning back in the seat, legs crossed casually like this was some late-night coffee chat, completely unfazed, completely Sloane. "Okay, but how was I supposed to know? You literally just ran off that night without even saying goodnight. After that amazing kiss we shared." Her words landed heavy. My stomach flipped so hard I almost missed the green light ahead. I pressed down on the gas a little too fast, my palms damp against the wheel. Then, before I could get a word out, I pulled over outside her building and parked. She reached for my hand, then stopped. "We should talk," she said, her dress, and it hit me like an electric current. My pulse spiked so fast I had to clench my teeth just to keep breathing normally. She gave my hand a slow squeeze, and she leaned in closer, her voice dropping low enough that it felt like a secret meant only for me. "Did you not like it?" she asked, her tone teasing, but sharp, almost challenging. "I thought maybe I was bad and that's why you ran away." Her words sunk in deep, almost suffocating me. The pressure of her thigh under my hand, the steady squeeze of her fingers, the smell of her perfume wrapping around me. It was too much at once. I opened my mouth to speak, to say something smart, or at least hold my ground. But all that came out was a shaky exhale. I couldn't hold back. My grip on the wheel was gone, and now all I could feel was her, warm and steady, pulling me right back into the fire I thought I'd escaped. I tightened my grip on her thigh, the warmth of her skin seeping through her dress, and steadied myself before finally turning my head toward her. The road stretched out in front of us, dark and almost endless, broken only by the occasional glare of passing headlights. My heart was hammering so loud, I swore she could hear it. "You really think that's why I left?" I asked, sharper than I meant to, my voice cutting through the quiet hum of the engine. "No, Sloane, I didn't run because of you or because of that kiss. My dad texted me. He wanted me home. It was late, and I didn't exactly have the freedom to argue." Her lips parted, surprise flickering across her face, the playful confidence she always carried slipping for a moment. She blinked at me like she hadn't expected that answer. For the first time that night, she looked caught off guard. "I didn't leave because of you," I said again, softer this time, my voice more controlled. But the weight behind the words made it feel like a confession. If anything, I hesitated, the words sticking in my throat, heat climbing into my cheeks. My chest tightened as I forced the truth out. "If anything, that kiss is the reason I couldn't stop thinking about you afterward." Her eyes widened just slightly, but I couldn't bring myself to hold her gaze. Instead, I yanked my hand back from her thigh, gripping the leather steering wheel so tightly my knuckles whitened. The leather was cool under my palms, grounding me as my whole body buzzed with adrenaline. I stared straight ahead at the passing center line, knowing I'd made a lot of bad choices lately. But this takes the cake. And that's what makes this. I motioned weakly between us with one hand, before quickly clamping it back on the wheel. So freaking twisted because I don't regret it. Not 1 second of it. And that's the problem. The car filled with silence so thick it pressed against my ears. The only sound was the steady thrum of the tires against asphalt and the low growl of the engine. I could feel her eyes on me, burning into the side of my face, like she was dissecting every word, every twitch in my expression. My throat was parched, my breathing unsteady, and I hated how bare I felt, like I had just handed her every card in my deck. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught it. That slow, deliberate smirk curving her mouth. The kind of smirk that said she wasn't just listening, she was enjoying this. She leaned back against the seat, folding one arm across her chest, her fingers drumming lazily against her skin like she'd just won something. Sloane's smirk softened, but her eyes stayed keen, fixed on mine. She leaned a fraction closer, just enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from her. Her voice dropped low, almost a whisper, but every word struck me like a spark. "I'll break up with him," she said, her fingers tracing lightly over the back of my hand, still resting on her thigh. "I want you." My stomach twisted, my pulse skyrocketing, my mind screamed, yes. Every nerve begged me to reach for her, but I forced myself to pull back a little, raking a hand through my hair. "Sloane," I began, my voice tight, caught somewhere between desperation and restraint. "We both know we won't be anything more than fun nights and amazing whatever this is." I swallowed hard, my eyes locking onto hers. "I'm sure it's probably the last time we'll meet like this. I just can't make it more than that. It would be wrong, messy. My dad." She studied me for a moment, that teasing gleam in her eyes softened by something else. Acceptance, maybe even admiration. Then, with a faint sigh, she leaned forward and pressed a light, lingering kiss to my cheek. "There," she said quietly, her lips brushing my skin, leaving me breathless. I sat back, my chest heaving, still feeling the heat of her touch lingering in every nerve. I glanced at the clock, and then at her. "I should probably get you home. Now, right now." Sloane smiled, sliding her seatbelt on, and I guided the car back onto the road. The drive was quiet, the hum of the engine blending with the tension that still clung to us. Every so often, she'd steal a glance at me, that same knowing smile tugging at her lips, making my heart pound, recalling the night at the party and every stolen touch in the car. When we finally rolled up to her building, I parked and cut the engine. She leaned over slightly, giving me a soft, teasing wink. "Thanks for the ride," she said, slipping out of the car gracefully, her perfume lingering even after she shut the door. I sat there for a moment, hands still on the wheel, heart hammering, knowing full well this night was burned into my memory forever. I got home that night and crumpled onto my bed, letting the sheets swallow me whole. The room was dark, except for the faint glow of the streetlights sneaking through my curtains, casting long, soft shadows across the walls. My heart was still hammering in my chest, a relentless drum that matched the rush of adrenaline and desire that wouldn't quit. I stared at the ceiling, trying to make sense of it all. Every moment with her played in my mind like a slow-motion film. The way her hand had pressed against mine, how her fingers had traced the curve of my cheek, the way she looked at me in the car, and of course that kiss I couldn't shake. Every memory felt alive, almost burning, impossible to shake. But as much as I wanted to give in to that pull, I knew I couldn't. Sloane had made her choice. She had broken up with my dad. And even though part of me had at the thought of her leaving that part of my life behind, I understood. She wanted me, yes, but she also wanted to do the right thing, to move forward without dragging anyone else into the chaos. The realization hit me slowly, settling like a stone in my chest. I would never tell my dad, not a single word. I couldn't bring myself to be the reason his heart got hurt. He trusted me, cared for me. And the last thing I would ever do was shatter that trust over something fleeting. even if it had been the most distracting thing I'd felt in a long time. Thing I'd ever felt. So just like that, Sloane became a ghost in my life. She was someone I had touched, laughed with, and burned for. But now I had to leave her behind. Nights like that, stolen glances, subtle touches, and whispered breaths. They were mine alone to carry. My heart had. But there was also a sweetness to it, a spark that refused to die. Even as the guilt and longing settled over me, a small, stubborn smile tugged at the corners of my lips. I remembered the way she had looked at me, teased me, made me feel reckless and alive in ways I hadn't known existed. Those moments were dangerous, yes, but beautiful and completely unforgettable. I closed my eyes, letting the memory of her linger just long enough to haunt me sweetly. My chest rose and fell with each breath, and though I knew I would never cross that line again, I also knew some things. Some people were too powerful to let go entirely, and so I drifted into a restless sleep, carrying her with me in the quiet spaces of my mind, knowing that part of me would never truly let her go. And that was the end of the story. If you loved so much, heavy ride, don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story like this. Comment down below what you would have done if you were in her shoes. I want to know. And share this video with your friends if you think they can handle the drama.